Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode 5. Tony, 5 episodes, Tony. This is incredible. The sustainability in here. So thank you, Tony, for joining me today. Anthony Pinto is in the house, everybody. And today we're going to be talking about asking better questions. The question is for you. Are you asking the right questions in order to speed up productivity, in order to minimize stress, and to minimize people running around like crazy chickens all over the organization? Most of the times, when we don't ask the right questions, what can happen is that people interpret the task or the goal differently, and they start running in different ways, which can cause miscommunication, chaos, as well as lower the productivity. So today we're going to be talking about how do we align our team and how do we use questions in order to bring people together and have them running on the same path so that we can minimize time, improve productivity, and as always, keep the stress as low as possible. So Tony, let's get started here. So tell us a little bit about asking better questions.
Yep. Hi, Jerry. Thanks so much. Yeah. And hello, everybody. Questioning skills, right? Now, you know that when we first started this is episode 5. So episode 2, 3, and 4, we actually covered some 3 very fundamental skills of communicating that really set the right tone for effective communicating. And that was, number 1 was active listening. Number 2 was building trust and rapport. And number 3 was managing state and emotion. Yep. So that's all about how to get the best, space for effective communicating. Now we're going to go into the real first conversational skill, which is asking questions or asking...
Tactical, Tony. We're going
tactical. So, because questions hold the potential for cultivating creative insight, right? Yeah. I'd just like to start with a couple of quotes here. One is from Einstein. And he said that the formulation of a problem is often more important than its solution. And raising new questions to solve a problem requires creative imagination. So that's how powerful question is. And Peter Drucker said this: the important and difficult job is never to find the right answer. It is to find the right question.
Powerful, yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. So, as we go into this area of asking questions, I was thinking about this and said, okay, as we spoke earlier, right, there are 2 really key types of questions. Sometimes questions can get into the linguistics. We don't understand the language and all of that, right? But really, at the end of the day, when we ask questions, some questions are asked primarily to describe the situation or problem we're dealing with. Yeah. So have we asked the questions exhaustively to explore that situation? And maybe we're not. And then sometimes we also have to ask questions about moving towards the solution. Now, you can't start questions to the solution until you've explored what the situation is exhaustively. And that's where most problems arise. A lot of leaders, why do leaders don't ask questions? What do you think, Jerry? Why do leaders don't ask questions, right? I mean, the obvious, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that the reason, there are a couple of reasons. First, we have to take, let me start again. There are many reasons why leaders don't normally ask questions. One of them is lack of time. They feel they don't have enough time to be asking questions. Number 2, sorry about that. Number 2 is that they are normally the experts in their field, or they feel like they are the experts. So they think that they know best. And because they don't have time, they rather just find the solution or give the solution away. And number 3, it could be a little bit toxic, in my opinion, and it could be that the leader doesn't trust their employees to come up with the solutions. So therefore, he just tries to find the solution and bypass the whole process of integrating the team. But what about you, Tony?
Exactly. We talk about Hal Gregerson doing research on innovators, right? And what they found especially in the area of questioning. Now, questioning is one of the 5 key skills of innovators. Good innovators, or very high effective innovators, ask a lot of questions, right? And what they found was that there are 2 great inhibitors in leaders asking questions. And number 1 is they don't want to look stupid. As you said, right? They're supposed to be the experts.
Yeah.
And when you ask a question, and sometimes I like to say, okay, can I ask a stupid question? Right? So leaders not wanting to look stupid, so they don't ask the questions. And the other one, of course, they're not willing to be seen as uncooperative or disagreeable. Because everybody is kind of talking about this, and you throw in a question that kind of shakes up everybody, and wait a minute. These are the 2 key reasons why they don't ask those questions that are needed to be asked sometimes. And of course, as you said, sometimes they feel that I don't have time to ask any questions. And earlier we talked about, is a leader question-centric or a leader telling-centric?
Yeah.
And we know telling-centric doesn't work effectively enough. So asking better questions is really the key, right? So, yes.
As you're saying that, I apologize today for my voice, everybody. I'm really sorry. I apologize. As you're saying that, I was thinking about yesterday's coaching session. I was at a company yesterday, and I'm waiting for the leader to come in, and he comes in 5 minutes late because he had to walk and so on. And when he sits down, I said, "Hey, would you like some water?" And his answer was, "No, I'm fine." That tells you automatically that this is not fine. So before we began, I asked, "What's the matter?" And he goes, I was just at a meeting, and I didn't feel welcome. I thought it was going to be a nice meeting, but the feeling was that I was not welcome." I said, "Okay, tell me more. What do you mean?" And this is exactly what he said. He said, "I was asking way too many questions that they didn't want to give the answer to."
Okay.
So it looked like I was asking for things and making them look bad. So they were giving me the answers in a way to like, "Hey, be quiet. Don't ask those questions in this meeting." And that's the other side of it. That's what popped up in my head as you were saying that as well, because maybe leaders don't want to ask questions when they're among other leaders and they're trying to collaborate for the sake of not being exiled out of the group.
Right. Yep. Or being seen to be disagreeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a challenge they face. But then still, if you don't ask those questions, you don't get the right answers, right? Yeah. So we're talking about, questions really are useful in, as I say, chunking down for specificity. And that's one category of questions we can ask. And that's mainly used to describe a situation that we are faced with. And then there are also questions that are used to chunk up in our intentions, basically. Yeah. And so quite different questions. And when we do coaching, of course, sometimes we have to really chunk it down quite a bit. And sometimes you just have to go up into the higher levels of the mind, which is belief systems and check intention.
Tony, for the sake of the listeners, can you explain to them what chunking down and chunking up means so that they know what we mean?
Yeah. So chunking down meaning just drilling down for specificity. For example, if you say that, okay, I have a car. Okay, what model is your car? That's chunking down already, right? And then you talk about, say, then you say, go further. Okay, I've got problem with my car. I say, which problem is the problem with the wheel? Okay, it's the wheel, right? Okay, which part of the wheel? Is it the nut and bolts or the tire? So we're chunking down to specificity such that we do not make any assumptions about what really is the problem, isn't it? And sometimes we don't chunk down to specificity enough, and we assume 5 different minds in a meeting may assume what has been said from their own representation and thinking, and it could be completely wrong, right? So whereas when you're going chunking up, then you're going to be more abstract, i.e., for example, it says, I like to drive my car. Why do you like to drive your car? Because it gives me a feeling of openness, So now we're going to chunk up in terms of the beliefs and intention. So what do you believe about openness? Yeah, or it gives me liberation. So what's your intention for wanting liberation? See how we're chunking up now? And when you're chunking up, you're getting more abstract and you get to the highest intention at the end of the day. Yeah. But on the shop floor, when you're dealing with a lot of problems and situations, you'll be doing a lot more chunking down than chunking up.
Yeah.
Whereas in our coaching situations, when it's the mind and the belief system that's kind of getting into the problem, we will do a bit more chunking up. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a distinction. But then the distinction also gives a very nice segue into the idea that when we're dealing with situations, we must be able to describe the situation exhaustively to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
And I always say that, situations have got 4 key components in them. There are people involved, there's a place involved, there's a time involved, and there are things involved. So to be able to describe a situation exhaustively, you got to ask questions about all these things. Who, what, when, where, and how questions, right? And what caused the situation questions, basically. So that's how we go about, getting specificity. Because if you don't get that kind of clarity, you're going to be all over the place, right? So that's where you start with, yeah? Now, if you describe the situation exhaustively enough, then you can start asking questions about how do we move towards the solutions, right? And of course, when you do that, you start asking different kind of questions. So why is this happening? Why not? Like I gave you an example earlier about the 5 whys question by, the Toyota Production Center.
Before we tell them about the 5 why questions, let's go back to the chunk down and get more tactical. So one exercise, let's talk about the one exercise of generating questions, spending about 4 to 5 minutes only generating questions about the problem, so that we can chunk down all the way down. So and think of every single possible question that we can think about the problem, to make sure that we are looking at the same problem altogether, first of all, and that we are asking the right questions, so that then we can go into the whys, so that then we can start working up a solution. So let's talk about more chunking down by using the question strategy, Tony. Try to do that.
So, for example, we're talking about a situation where there's a problem, right? Now, so you're going to ask, who is involved? How many people are involved? Who specifically are involved with this problem? Who is responsible for this problem? Who has got the ownership to find a solution? Those are all the who questions, the people, right?
Yeah.
So what are we talking about specifically in this problem? For example, let's talk about a faulty conveyor belt on a production line, right? So what are we talking about? Where is the problem, right? Oh, it's the conveyor belt. So what do you mean by conveyor belt? Is what is it? The belt moving too fast or too slow? Is it the quality of the rubber on the belt or the belt rubber? Is it the rollers that's happening?
Is it the rollers?
See what I mean?
Is it grease? Is it missing grease? Is it the bolts? So we ask a bunch of questions and we exhaust the question phase, so that we have every single question, and that doesn't mean that the questions are all going to be useful. It's just to
brainstorming questions, or we call it question storm. We talk about the technique by Hal Gregerson, right?
Yeah.
The powerful question storm technique, right? So generate as many questions as you can. Just drop those questions without answering those questions, without pre-framing or preambling the questions, and making the questions short and non-toxic, right? Then you can really get an exhaustive play on a situation. So, for example, so when did this conveyor first start giving this problem? How long has this been happening? See what I mean? And have we had this problem before?
Yeah.
Yeah, and which conveyor, with how many conveyors are involved? If they got more one conveyor line, right? Yeah.
Can this happen in the future? So many different questions that you can throw at the wall. And I like when, I'm sure you do the same thing. When I do this in workshops, I like to use sticky notes, and I was going to speak German. I was going to say the Teilnehmer. The participants, I start mixing German. The participants, they tend to like it very much and they get very creative. I did this exercise at a workshop a couple of weeks ago. And the funny part is that asking such questions and formulating such questions can lead to something different. So, without giving too much information, what came up out of all of those questions when they were trying to define the problem, it turned out that it was another problem.
Yep.
There was no clear definition for their vision as a group. And that was not the task that what we started with. And that opened up a whole new can of worms. And then they found the problem to the problem. And it was all through just this exercise. So it's extremely useful.
Yeah, I remember this too, now that you triggered that one, right? When I run this 2-day communication skills workshop, one of the skills we teach is asking questions, right? Yeah. And I normally do a demonstration of this technique. And someone will come up and tell me about the situation they're dealing with. And I just keep asking. So my role at that 5, 10, 15-minute conversation is only ask questions, right? And I ask them these questions. I keep asking them quite a number of times. The participant that comes up, and usually I'm working with managers, and they come up and I keep asking these questions. They arrive at a point when they say, wait a minute, this actually is not my problem. It's the other guy's, issue, not mine. How come I make it mine? Number one. And number two, sometimes they find out, oh, wait a minute, this is actually not a problem. I just have to make a decision and it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So, but because we're so caught up, we don't ask those questions to explore. Yeah. So always remember that in any situation, we're dealing with people. It's happening at a place. That there's a time involved and there are things involved. And being exhaustive with those questions in terms of chunking it down to the greatest detail is what's going to give you an exhaustive understanding of the situation. Questions about who, questions about what, questions about when, questions about where and how questions. And of course, finally, questions about what caused this situation. What caused it, right?
Yeah, and what you're doing on top of that, if you run it with your team, you can do this with a one-on-one. But if you do it as a team, what happens is that the team feels integrated. Then you'd have more minds working towards fixing the problem, and you're gonna get a lot better answers. And the team is gonna feel just more together, and they're gonna feel like a team. So you're not just solving a problem by doing this. You're actually integrating the team and enabling them to come up with solutions and take accountability for the potential solutions. And you're going to be saving time because we think the first thing as a leader, we think this is going to take a lot of time to put this together. Let me just give them an answer. But it actually doesn't in the long run because you are preparing them for them to come up with solutions in the future. So this is going to save you a lot of time.
Yeah, at the end of the day. So first, you got to be exhaustive in describing the situation with all those questions, right? And then, of course, if you want to move to solution, then we're looking for questions that will disrupt the current thinking because we are stuck in this problem because we have this thinking. And, been stuck with certain questions that are only putting us there. Now we got to move out of that, right? So the questions that we want to do when ask, and this, of course, comes from Hal Gregersen. I need to give credit to the fantastic technique is brought up, is disrupting the situation. So we ask why questions. Why is this happening? Why this? Why not? Why not this way and why not that way? I remember when I was growing up as a child, my parents used to get very, very tired of me asking questions of why. Because I'll ask one after the other, why? Give me an answer, I ask why. Give me an answer, why, right? So the why questions are very useful, yeah? Only after you've got a clear description of the situation with the questions. And of course, then ask what if questions, right? So for example, let's say, I think Apple was the one that did it, yeah? So Apple, how did they come up with the, iPod, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question they asked is, so what if this what we call asking a what if question that imposes a constraint. So what if we could put all of that into a small little pocket-sized device? So now you've created a constraint that's saying that it's got to go into a pocket.
Yeah.
And when they asked that question, people had to come up with different ideas, and eventually came up with that's little, what do you call the iPod, right?
iPod.
Yeah. So that's how you do that. Yeah. And another important constraint question could be, so if we were legally prohibited from selling this product to this area of customers, how else would we create revenue then? So now you're creating another different constraint. Now people are going to think so much differently to come up with that, right? And then, of course, you can also remove constraints. Yeah. If we didn't have this constraint in front of us, if we didn't have this particular, like, for example, I think AI now is creating a lot of that kind of situation, removing constraints.
Correct.
Right. For example, now in the universities, they are saying that students cannot use AI to write their thesis paper.
Essays, yeah.
So you can say, okay, what if we allow them to do it completely? What will happen? Right?
Yeah.
And then, different ideas might come up, right? Yeah. So as we go into that, you can see that, questions can be very, very liberating, and you can get to solutions that you never thought of before. And that's why asking questions is such a powerful technique. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention before we finish that what we're talking about is normally implemented in teams where they get along, where there's transparency, where there's psychological safety, and that we are also conscious that at some organizations the hierarchy is very strong, and quite often when you have such a hierarchy, it is very difficult to implement such exercises because there's no space, there's no inclusion for you to do such exercises. So we do understand that, and this will not work at every organization. And if this is the case in your side, then you can also contact us, and we can talk to you guys about how we can help you switch from that type of culture to a more inclusive and more welcoming culture. So that will be a different topic. We can do it in another session as well. But I just want to be mindful that there are organizations and teams where you're not allowed to open your mouth. So it's a reality.
Well, so the kind of questions we're talking about today, Jerry, is that it's about, taking something in our mind, because we all have experiences and we represent those experiences in our mind. And what we're now doing is asking questions to take it out and put it out there. So from inside out, right?
Yeah.
So, I may think about a conveyor, but I want to know if somebody else might want to know specifically, what am I thinking about that conveyor? Is it a conveyor belt, or is it so inside out questions, right?
Yeah.
So these are the first set of questions that we deal with. And most of the times we'll be dealing with that kind of questions, especially on production floors and all of that. But there's another set of questions where we go outside in, right? And this I mentioned earlier about questions that kind of, explore our belief systems, our prohibitions, our fears and intentions, all of that, right? Because sometimes in certain situations, if we do not understand the intention of why people are behaving in the way they behave, and we don't ask those questions, and we stay with the inside out, they will never get to the real problem, right? So, and those are different sets of questions we're not talking about today. We can talk about it in the next session. Yeah, those outside in questions. Always, as I said, the chunking up questions, right? So today is all about the inside out questions and the chunking down questions. Yeah. So, this whole minefield, if we get good at asking questions, the solutions show up.
Yeah. And faster and even better solutions. You come up with better solutions.
Yeah.
So Tony, how can we end the podcast with a bang? So how can we end this with a bang? I'll let you close it today.
Well, my sense is this, and I've always been the kind of person that asks a lot of questions, and there's not too many questions you can ask. So I would say get out there and just ask those questions. Don't hold back. Don't feel that you're going to look stupid, and don't feel that you're going to be disagreeable. Because if they feel that you are stupid and they feel that you are disagreeable, you're probably with the wrong crowd.
Yeah. And I would say if you are in a situation like that where you might be afraid of asking questions, formulate them in a way that you're asking them for their opinion on something. Instead of challenging what they are saying, formulate them in a way that you're asking them for their opinion. What do you think about this? I heard about this type of solution before from another department. What do you think about it? Or what thoughts do you have about it? Or what's your opinion? Right?
Yeah.
Because when we start asking people who are higher than us for their opinion, they're still conserving their place in the hierarchy, and you're introducing the possibility of a different solution, yet you're letting them get it for themselves so that you don't have to take the credit for it, but at least you are working for the organization and not for yourself. So formulate it in a way that you can throw it in there as if you're asking for their opinion, I would say. Yeah.
Yep. Transferring ownership.
So have a beautiful
Great.
day, everybody. This was episode 5. I am excited. And check out the other 4 episodes because you're going to get a lot of insights, as well as episode 6 that is coming up. So stay tuned and have a beautiful and wonderful day.
Thanks, Jerry.